My name is Rachel Parker, and the last time I saw my family was at a funeral. Not because they came to support me, but because they didn't. It was my husband's funeral, and I stood there alone. Not a single call. No hug. Not even a damn text. I remember dialing my sister Lauren the night before, my voice barely holding together. She answered mid-laugh, background buzzing with music and chatter. Oh, Ratch, tonight's not a good time. We're celebrating Dad's retirement in Florida. Can we talk tomorrow? Tomorrow? I buried the only person who believed in me and my family. They chose champagne and selfies. Do you know what it feels like to be uninvited to your own grief? I stood by that casket and realized I wasn't just mourning Jason. I was mourning a family that had already buried me a long time ago. Have you ever been left out like you never mattered? Drop a broken heart in the comments if you've ever felt invisible in your own story. Before the grief, before the silence, and the betrayal, there was Jason Carter. I met him on a rainy Tuesday in Boston, of all places. I was 24, drenched from head to toe, late for an interview, and cursing under my breath when my heel broke right outside Lexington Cafe. Jason, this tall, scruffy guy in a navy hoodie, walked past, stopped, and said, "Looks like today's already trying to humble you. You want some coffee while the world resets?" That was our beginning. He didn't flirt. He didn't push. He just sat there, quietly listening while I ranted about broken shoes and broken families. I think what struck me most wasn't his smile, it was the way he looked at me, like I was someone worth hearing. We dated for 5 years before he proposed, not with a ring but with a passport and 2 tickets to Iceland. "Let's go see the Northern Lights," he said, "because I want to promise you forever under something bigger than us." Jason was safe. He was the first man who didn't try to fix me or explain me. He held space for me, the loud, the hurt, the ambitious, the awkward. I still remember our Sunday rituals. Breakfast burritos and jazz at Joe's Diner. Grocery runs where he always forgot the almond milk. And reading in bed, side by side, our feet always tangled. He'd say, "You are the storm, Rachel, and I'm the guy who built a house to live in it." But here's the thing, he wasn't just my husband. He was the only person who ever challenged the narrative my family wrote about me, that I was too sensitive, that I took things personally, that I always made things dramatic. Jason saw that all I ever wanted was to be seen. And maybe that's why losing him felt like losing the one person who kept me tethered to this earth. He was my home, and when he died, it felt like I had been evicted from every version of love I ever believed in. It didn't start with fireworks. It never does. Betrayal often whispers before it roars. After Jason and I got married, I naturally thought my relationship with my family would improve. But it didn't. If anything, the distance between us grew thicker, invisible, like fog, but just as blinding. It was the little things at first, like how my mother, Nancy, would always introduce me as, "This is Rachel, the creative one. She does something with nonprofits, right, honey?" I ran a successful social justice organization in Chicago, but to her, I was still the dramatic teen who read too many books and slammed too many doors. My father, Charles, was quieter, but he had a way of defending my older brother, Matt, that always cut deep. "He's just under pressure," he'd say when Matt forgot my birthday. Or, "Don't take it personally. You know how he gets," when Matt called my grief exhausting just 2 months after Jason passed. But the moment things shifted, really shifted, was Thanksgiving. It was the first one without Jason. I had just returned from our cabin in Vermont, where I spent his birthday alone, wrapped in his old hoodie, rereading his letters. I walked into the family home expecting, I don't know, softness? A hug? A plate set with my name? But I wasn't even on the seating chart. Matt's new girlfriend, Samantha, had my seat. "I didn't know you were coming," my mom said, eyes wide, like I was the surprise problem at her well-curated dinner party. I just stood there with my pumpkin pie in hand, hearing Jason's voice in my head from a year ago. "They'll never see you, Ratch." But I do. I didn't cry. Not then. I smiled politely, said I wasn't staying long, and sat at the kiddie table next to my 6-year-old niece Emily, who asked, "Auntie Ratch, "Where's Uncle Jason?" And I lied. I said, "He's with the stars tonight." But inside, I was screaming. After dinner, I overheard my mom in the kitchen whispering to Samantha, "Rachel's always been dramatic. She makes everything about her. It's exhausting." I stood there, frozen. Not because I hadn't heard it before, but because I thought grief would change things. I thought death would reset something in my family, make them softer, make them see me. But all it did was amplify what was already there. The final straw? A week later, my mom sent a family group text. "Let's plan a family cruise for spring. Matt and Samantha will share the master suite." No mention of me. No check-in. "No. How are you holding up after spending your first holiday alone?" I replied, "I think I'll pass." She left me on read. It was in these moments I started piecing it together. This wasn't new. This wasn't about grief. I had always been the extra in my own family's movie. Jason just made me feel like I was the lead. And without him, I was back to being invisible. The snow hadn't even begun to melt when my world split open again. It was early March. I had just finished hosting a memorial fundraiser in Jason's name. It had taken me months to even say his name in public without choking. But that night, I stood on a stage in front of 200 people and shared our story. His heart, our love, his legacy. People cried. They donated. They hugged me. For once, I felt seen. But then, my phone lit up with a message from Matt. Just one line. "We need to talk." About Mom's will. Mom's will? I hadn't even known she was sick. Or dying. Turns out, she wasn't either. She was perfectly fine, sipping herbal tea in her sunroom in Savannah, surrounded by scented candles and crystals she didn't believe in. But she had updated her will. And, apparently, Matt had already seen it. Because of course he had. I drove down 2 weeks later, hoping, still hoping, that maybe this would be the thing that would bring us together. That maybe Mom was trying to make amends in her own, awkward way. Instead, I walked into a war zone. The lawyer was already there. Matt was seated at the table, arms crossed like he was waiting for a verdict. And Mom? She didn't even stand to hug me. Just said, "Rachel, you look tired." Tired? I was crumbling. Grief isn't tiredness. It's erosion. The lawyer cleared his throat and opened the folder. He started listing items: property, trusts, heirlooms. The lake house. The antique jewelry. The art pieces Jason once helped her hang. All of it to Matt. To Matt. To Matt. Every line felt like a slap. When he got to my name, I braced myself. "She's left you the piano," the lawyer said. The piano. The old, out-of-tune upright in the garage. The one I played as a child, alone, when no one came to my recitals. Matt smirked. Mom sipped her tea. And I just sat there shaking. "Is this a joke?" I asked. Mom finally looked at me, but not with softness. With irritation. "You're not exactly stable, Rachel," she said. "You don't own a home. You flit around from city to city. You're emotional. You cry too much. You're not grounded." I stared at her, stunned. "Jason died," I whispered. "My husband died, and you're punishing me for grieving?" "Jason was lovely," she said. "But grief doesn't give you a pass to be dramatic for the rest of your life." That's when something inside me snapped. I stood up so fast my chair screeched across the floor. "You know it's dramatic, Mom," I said, voice trembling. "Spending your whole life pretending you're the perfect family while slowly bleeding your daughter dry. That's dramatic. That's cruel." Matt rolled his eyes. "Don't make this a scene, Rach." And I turned to him, seething. "You got the house, the art, the bank accounts. I got a piano and a therapist's phone number I can't afford anymore. So for once in your life, Matt, shut up." The lawyer looked like he wanted to vanish. But I kept going. "None of you came when Jason was dying. None of you sat with me when he forgot my name or couldn't breathe. You didn't hold his hand. You didn't hold mine. You sent fruit baskets and links to grief blogs." And then I turned back to Mom. I was never the unstable one. I was the truthful one. The one who saw the cracks and dared to name them. And you resented me for it. Silence. Mom blinked. Matt tapped his fingers. And I walked out. I drove for hours. Past state lines. Past guilt. Past all the fake smiles and family photos where I was always slightly off-center. When I got home, I found Jason's last journal. He wrote, "Rachel, when I'm gone, you'll be tempted to go back to them. But remember, love isn't who's around you when it's convenient. It's who stands beside you when the sky collapses." I sobbed. For him. For me. For the little girl who learned to hide her feelings just to survive dinner. Then I made a decision. I sold the piano. I donated the money to a grief center for young widows. And I blocked every number I needed to. 6 months later, I was standing barefoot in the middle of a community garden in Portland, Oregon. The sun was warm. The earth smelled like rain and rosemary. And for the first time in what felt like years, I was not waiting for anyone's approval. The garden wasn't mine. It belonged to a grief support nonprofit I'd started volunteering for, New Roots. I found them by accident through a forum post titled, "Still breathing? You belong." Every Tuesday, I'd show up. We'd plant herbs, share tea, talk about the ones we lost, not like ghosts but like guides. It wasn't therapy. It was truth with dirt under its fingernails. One of the women, Carla, lost her daughter to a drunk driver. Another, Jillian, was a nurse who sat with strangers as they passed. None of us had answers. But we had each other. One day, Jillian asked, "Do you play piano?" I almost laughed. "I used to," I said. "I gave it away." She nodded. "Good. Maybe now you can play something else." That stuck with me. So I did. I picked up writing again. Just little things at first, blog posts, poems, letters to Jason I never mailed. Then one day, I wrote our full story. All of it. Grief. Love. The day he proposed in the rain with a ring he got from Etsy. The hospice nurse who told me, "You're stronger than you think." The night I screamed into a pillow so loudly my neighbor knocked on my door with soup and tissues. I titled it, "The Piano I Never Played." I published it on Medium. Didn't expect much. Just needed to let it go. 2 weeks later, it had 87,000 views. People wrote to me. Widows. Caregivers. Estranged daughters. A man named Eli who had just buried his partner and said, "I didn't think anyone else knew what it felt like to lose someone twice, once in death, and once in family betrayal." And there it was. Connection. Not through perfection, but through pain. Mom never called. Matt sent a one-line email that said, "Guess writing about us helped your career." I didn't reply, because it wasn't about them anymore. It was about the 19-year-old girl in my grief group who asked me to read my story aloud during our weekly circle. It was about the single dad at the library who checked out my essay printout 3 times and left a note in the book that said, "You reminded me to stay alive." It was about me, remembering who I was before I was the too sensitive one. The one who cried too easily, felt too deeply, loved too loudly. I wasn't too much. I was true. And the best part? I didn't need a family who couldn't see that. I had made a new one. One Sunday afternoon, as we gathered around the garden beds, Carla handed me a small box. "Open it," she said, smiling. Inside was a tiny charm, a piano, silver, no keys. "We figured," she said, "you never really gave it away. You just changed how you play." I cried. Not because I was broken, but because I was whole. Grief never left me, but it stopped driving. Now I hold the wheel. And every morning, when I journal, I end the page with one line. Love didn't die. It just moved somewhere new. Hi. If you're still here, thank you. Really. From my heart. This wasn't easy to tell. Not because I'm ashamed anymore, but because when you live through something like this, the pain, the rejection, the loss, you start to wonder if your truth deserves a voice. But here's what I've learned. It does. You do. If you've ever loved someone that deeply and lost them, you know that grief doesn't ask for permission. It crashes in, unannounced. It moves your furniture around, erases your calendar, and then whispers, You'll never be the same again. And that's true. But what grief doesn't tell you is this. You'll never be the same, because now you're becoming someone new, someone softer, someone stronger, someone who sees others in their suffering and doesn't turn away. I want to talk to you, the one watching right now who has been told, get over it. It's been long enough. Don't air family drama. Just move on. Here's your permission to ignore all of that. You don't have to get over it. You just have to get through it. And in the process, you might become a version of yourself you never imagined. One with deeper compassion. One with clearer boundaries. One who no longer accepts scraps just to feel loved. One who writes their own damn song, piano or not. If this story touched something in you, maybe it's because part of your story was tucked inside mine. Maybe you've been the black sheep, the scapegoat, the one who dared to choose truth over tradition. And it cost you everything. I see you. You're not alone. There are thousands of us, scattered across cities and small towns, on grief forums and in yoga studios, volunteering at community gardens, writing late-night blog posts that might never go viral. But still, we're out here, surviving, healing, growing. And I want to invite you into that space. Not to fix you, but to remind you, you were never broken, just bruised, just unheard, just maybe too alive for people stuck in numbness. So, if you're still listening, I'd love to know. Have you ever been silenced by your own family? Have you ever lost someone and felt like your grief wasn't convenient enough for others to acknowledge? Are you ready to reclaim your voice? Then let's talk. Drop a comment below. Not just for me, for the next person scrolling who thinks they're the only one. Let's build this quietly powerful community of truth tellers, of heart holders, of people who know that grief doesn't mean weakness. It means we were brave enough to love in the first place. And if you've been told you're too sensitive, I hope you wear that like armor now. Because sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's your superpower. You're not too much. You're real. You're needed. You're still here. And that's everything. Until next time, take care of your heart. It's done a lot of heavy lifting. Rachel.